Free supply. Oh, that means it's us. Oh, cool.
I mean,
we look at each other. Are we live? Apparently.
I don't know, man.
It looks like we're live up there, watching ourselves in that one window.
I can't see myself. Oh,
hey, there we go.
I don't know.
That's cool. It fades in.
Oh,
this is the new program, guys, by the way.
Sweet.
We're using the Wirecast instead of the eCam Live, so now we can broadcast to Facebook and YouTube from one camera, so that way we're not looking back and forth to different cameras, but hey, welcome. It's Monday.
All right, we're always changing things up. Oh, hey, we're giving away orders again today?
Yeah, it's Monday. We're back on the normal schedule. Normal
giveaway days?
So Monday, we think we're going to give stuff away. I got some stuff pulled. So.
All right, well, you're going to wait for a couple people to join us. You know, hopefully in a minute or so we'll have 100 come, some people. So in the meantime, how many we got today?
How many we got? What?
How many of these?
Oh,
got?
3. Yeah, it's 3, and nobody had stuff in their shopping cart. I don't know if you guys
That's 2
are
weeks in a row,
not
man.
putting things in your shopping cart, but preferred reefers. So basically, what we're doing is we're giving stuff away, whether it's an order in the last 30 days, up to a certain dollar value, or stuff in your shopping cart. If you got stuff in your shopping cart and you're a preferred reefer, which you can sign up all over the page. It's kind of everywhere, product pages, what have you. But yeah, you get a chance to get some stuff refunded.
All right, so we're going to talk about two-part stuff today. Different ones, just kind of difference between all of them, you know, because there's 8 million of them, and what's the difference? And, you know, before that, we'll give away these orders. So this guy, Bradley Vaughn of Greensboro, North Carolina, bought 50 milliliters of probiotic bacteria from Aquaforest, as well as reef fuel from Brightwell Aquatics, $37.34. Oh, nope. $34.98 going back to his account. So awesome, man. Awesome. Nice. Next one.
I'll do the next one. You get a big one. Big-ish.
Oh, well.
It's a good one. This is Gene. Gene from Enfield, Connecticut. You got some Core 7s, the 1,000 mil set. So the $52 set. Just gonna give that back to you. So you pretty much get a free, however long that takes you, maybe a month or so to dose. You got a whole month on us.
All right, and James Metz from Brooklyn, New York. You got a aquarium salt mix 200-gallon sack from Red Sea, that big bag in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, $83. Do-yourself screen top hanging clips from Red Sea also, and it is a total of $104.49 going back to your account. So sweet. Just for you to know, be a preferred reefer. See the link at the bottom, and either your order or the stuff in your cart can be free.
Cool.
All right, I think we got how many can you tell about how many people are here? I don't know this new program. 205 on YouTube. Good enough, man. Good enough. All right, so we're going to answer questions about two-part today. We're also just going to kind of muddle our way through. I talk a lot about major, minor, and trace elements for this Friday's video. We are on track to release it. Get back on schedule. So the hybrid series, we'll put that back on. All right, so let's start with the original, man, or I don't know, amongst the originals anyway. I mean, who is the original two-part?
I've always heard it was the balling type method.
The balling method?
I mean, it says on the box the original balling method, but
that's balling.
I
would say, though. I'm curious if anybody here knows what the first two-part that like ever came out is. I mean, labeled as like that kind of thing. Man, share it in the comments. I'd be interested to see what people think. But I'm pretty certain it's either the balling method coming out of Germany, or this ESV one's been around like for a really, really long time. Bionic.
Yep.
I wonder how long the one from Two Little Fishes has been around. It's been a long time too.
No, it's not Biopronto. What is it called? What was
I don't know. It's like AB.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's just
AB.
AB.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so we're gonna start with the oldest, or one of the oldest ones here, and that's Bionic. So, you know, the biggest difference between all the stuff is trace elements, right? Because, like, what else is it gonna be? You know, I mean, so there's 2 parts here, and there's like all the way up to like 7 parts. You know, so we call them all 2 parts just because that's what, you know, the hobby does. Basically because it's adding calcium and alkalinity, and then it adds a bunch of other stuff as well, all the trace elements and whatnot. So we're just going to try to like explore the different approaches to trace elements, I guess, today, you know, because that's really the only difference between almost all of this stuff is how they approach it. Not just like, you know, how many bottles it is, how many things they are, but like the cost and, you know, is it worth all the dosing pumps and stuff that some of them need, you know? So, you know, we'll just kind of approach it all. So first thing, we'll give me your thoughts on ESV, I guess.
I'll give you everything I know about it, which is not much. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen it around a lot. The only what I was telling him before the camera is like, what do I know about the ESV? Well, I do know like in the larger sizes, you have to dilute it up to a certain point that they have marked on there.
I think it's mainly because they don't want to ship around water.
Yeah,
super expensive.
Yeah,
so.
super expensive, and then you can damage and
freeze
heavier.
and stuff.
Yeah, so outside of that, yeah, it's good stuff. I guess.
All right, man. I mean, even this thing says don't store below 60 degrees, probably because it will start to precipitate out, and then you'll have to like soak it in hot water again. So B-Ionic to me, man, is one of the original guys. It is one of the only like true two parts out there, meaning that there's actually only one part or two parts attached to it. Has calcium in it in part one. No, part one's alkalinity, part two is calcium, and then they mix a bunch of trace elements right in the bottle. So it's only two parts, two dosing pumps. That's it, and you get the whole thing. Now, the upside of that is it's super easy. Also, ESV is cheap. Amongst the cheapest options out there for like a retail two-part. The downside to this kind of approach is that it doesn't have every trace element out there.
Yeah.
There's only so many you can mix
like
in.
70 or somewhere around there.
No,
70
in this
plus.
one?
No.
Oh,
I mean like
total?
in total.
Yep.
I think Tropic Marine or somebody. I think Lou was telling us like there's 70 plus total, but a lot of these have like 20 some in there, or some of them have 20 some in there, 23. But
yeah, so you can't mix them all in there though, otherwise they'll precipitate out, especially when you got super high concentrations of alkalinity or super high concentrations of calcium. The stuff will precipitate out. So I'll just go ahead and like throw a couple out there that this thing seems to be maintaining. It's got carbonate and then sodium, bicarbonate, sulfate, borate, fluoride, iodide, selenate, and vanadate. So, they got a whole bunch of things in that one. And then this one, inside the calcium one, they got calcium, magnesium, potassium, bromide, strontium, lithium, barium, rubium, iron, zinc, nickel, copper, manganese, cobalt, and chromium. So there's quite a few, but it isn't like the full breadth of...
Yeah.
Oops, lost a cap there. It's not the whole breadth of trace elements, but I don't know, man, if you really need to like maintain every last one of them. So like with a lot of them, you get like molybdenum and stuff, and those things definitely have a role in photosynthesis, and they control the rates of photosynthesis and stuff. But it's more complex, the risk of overdosing and all that kind of stuff if you're doing it by yourself. So I think a lot of people are just going to find this to be more than satisfactory because it's cheap. It's easy and it's better than none.
I'm not playing. Yeah, I'm not playing mad scientist with individual bottles. So if they do it for me, and okay, yeah, great.
One of the universal things is what will most super experienced reefers tell you: never ever dose.
Something you're not testing for.
Yep, that's it, right? That don't dose anything to the tank you're not testing for, which in the past, man, meant like almost nothing really, unless you trust that it's mixed in here proper. Like you don't want to do magic elixir. But now with ICP testing, you can really dose a lot of different things. And then, if you got to test it every month to know that you're on track, you're probably not using the right thing. But you can test it every quarter, every year or bi-yearly or whatever, and just kind of make sure whatever you're doing isn't going way off track.
Yeah.
Like, way far away from natural seawater. All right, so the next approach, I guess, is when you start adding trace elements into the individual bottles here. Did we get that Triton one up here, man? Oh, there it is.
Yeah, right in front. There you go.
So here's Triton Core 7.
One of the four.
One of the four. There's a bunch of them up here.
Yeah.
And so, with the Triton solution, what they've done is made them into four. I won't put all four of them up here, but they've turned it into four different products. And then the advantage of using four different products is that you can put the trace elements in with the bottles, right? And then when you put it in with the four different bottles, you can add more, right? And so more trace elements. And the cool thing about the Triton method is like attached to it is the fact that you are going to use ICP testing, right? And so like part of the DNA of the whole thing is actually prove that it works.
Well, along with that testing is not only is it included in each one of these, and I can test for them, but if I need to make corrections to an individual one, the Triton's got all of the ones that you test for, like we were talking about. If you're not testing for it, don't dose it, but I can actually dose molybdenum and straight to the tank if I'm low on it. So.
Yeah, you can dose that exact thing. So to me, that's the coolest thing that's really happened to two parts in the last couple of years is accountability. Like before, it was magic elixir, dump it in, and hope it works. And some of the vendors, man, would be more trustworthy than others, I guess. But like really, what this has added is this thing's designed to be used with a trace element, so or with a test kit. So it saying, hey man, it actually works. And then if it doesn't, here's a way to correct it. With just distinct advice. So, it's 4 parts. A couple of, what would you say some upsides to Tritons are, I guess?
Specifically for the Core 7 is how concentrated this stuff is. This stuff is like super concentrated, more so than like 2-part. For example, when we were on the 160, when we were doing just standard soda ash and calcium chloride, I think by the time that we cut it off and switched over to Triton, we were at 155 mils per day of alkalinity and calcium. And then I hooked up the 7 times concentrated Triton stuff, and the 60 mils a day, 65 mils a day was enough to buffer what we were doing at 150, 160 mils a day of 2-part. So like lost half of it or more than half of it. So we're dosing less, which means I'm not using as much too. So I'm not adding, I guess, I don't know if, would you increase, I wonder how the sodium chloride levels are on this versus a standard 2-part.
I think it's just the
Same.
same. It's just so you can get it more concentrated.
Yeah.
So I'd say the upside to this one is that same things, man. We're adding trace elements, we're adding accountability. It's more concentrated. It's definitely more expensive because you got like a more advanced approach.
Yeah.
A couple of downsides to it. Oh, another upside to it is it comes in like multiple formulations, right? Okay. And so you have the Triton method, which is really to me just a 4-part or 2-part that's designed to be used with a refugium.
Right.
It's just a 4-part or 2-part that if you have a refugium, there's some things that like chaetomorpha and whatever uptakes, so iron and whatnot. And so this, replaces those things in an environment where those things we know full well are being uptaken. So they have the other methods,
Yeah, which is just without the stuff for macroalgae growth.
Yep. So if you don't have refugiums, the other method.
Yeah. And then there's the base elements, which is the not 7 times concentrated stuff. So you can, some people have small takes or small demands where they just can't use 7 times concentrated stuff. But you want the benefits of trace elements too. But they have the standard base elements that isn't concentrated but does have trace elements in it also. And then you could just dose more, or you could dose that instead of 7 times concentrated. Get the same trace elements. I think that one's pretty rare now. For now, yeah, for the most part.
Most part of this Core 7s are the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then, now we've upped the game, right? So we went from a handful of trace elements inside 2 bottles to a whole slew of them inside of 4 different bottles. And then, that approach just keeps expanding. So within that, there is next the Red Sea guy. So Red Sea has a different approach, it's to their 2-part. So it has a 3-part, which is the calcium, the alkalinity, and then the magnesium. And then they handle trace elements with their, trace colors program, which is 4 different of these dosing bottles. So here's the thing with that is you almost certainly have greatly expanded the total amount of elements that you can dose by keeping all of the trace elements separate.
Right.
Not only have you like effectively dosed them, because a lot of them say they probably have all this stuff in there, but by keeping them separate like that, you almost certainly are dosing them in an effective manner where it's not precipitated out in any fashion. Because I could throw anything in a bottle and it will add, but will it add in a usable form? Right. So to me, man, like the 7-part here is probably. I don't know. I can't say it's the best option out there, but what I'd say is it's probably one of the better approaches. Because it's probably going to have the most total available trace elements.
More comprehensive in all of the trace minor major trace element type.
Probably, maybe not the most. I'm not going to go ahead and say that, but probably the most effective. Especially when you start to get into the halogens and stuff like that. And so, with that though, a couple of downsides.
If you want to automate everything, each one needs its own dosing pump, dosing head, which isn't terrible these days. With you get dosers with 4 heads that are just built in automatically, and then you could add on like a slave doser or an additional doser that ties into that, and all of them can be programmed. Otherwise, you're
But
kind
you
of
got 7 heads now.
But you got you got 7 heads.
7 things to buy, 7 heads to maintain, and
Or dosing by hand.
You dose by hand, if you remember. So one of the things I'd say about like dosing anything, stability. So if I'm gonna dose these things like willy-nilly, like every 3rd Sunday, and then I'm gonna skip half of them because I'm just lazy. I don't know, but like I probably wouldn't do it at all. I'd probably pick something different, like dosing this thing that reliably and stably does half as many elements is probably better than doing 2 or 3 times as many elements but doing it really unstably.
Yeah.
So I think if you want one of the better approaches, it's probably this one. It's also the most expensive of all of the 2 parts that we sell, both in just the 2 parts itself, but I think also once you add in the trace element thing, man, now is by far the most expensive option. But the most advanced approaches are generally not the cheapest or the easiest.
Yeah, true.
So all right, let's step it up, man. We got now, I would say, going totally different direction is the Tropic Marine guy. So the Tropic Marine one is the balling method, and they take like a slightly different approach to this. It kind of gets back to just 2-part, and the first one, just there's part A, B, and C. Part A clearly says in the front of the box, man, calcium chloride. That's it. The next one clearly states sodium carbonate and bicarbonate. So it's like a mix, right? Probably have a lower pH than straight, sodium carbonate or soda ash. And then they have part C, which is, I wish they could label this thing better.
A non-sodium chloride.
Sodium chloride free salt.
Sodium chloride. There you go. Sodium chloride free salt.
Yeah, like what does sodium chloride free salt mean to the average person? It's super, really, I think it's been confused.
Could we say dry trace elements?
There you go, dry trace elements, bingo. That's really simple.
Really all it is, right?
So yeah, all it is all your trace elements go into the 3rd bottle, dosed in the same amount as your part A and B.
Yeah.
And why they call it sodium chloride free salt is because, if you break up salt, or the sea salt, it's going to be sodium, chloride, calcium, alkalinity, and then like everything else that's in the water, right? Including magnesium and whatnot. So in this case, what they've done is they had sodium and chloride in a bottle. They had sodium, calcium chloride rather.
Right.
And they put sodium carbonate and bicarbonate in a bottle. So they got all those covered. This is everything else. So all the other things in one bottle, and I guess I don't know how they get around the precipitation issue, but it's probably at a way lower concentrate than a lot of other ones, so it probably doesn't have the same issues. And it's just dosed in the same amounts. You got part A, B, and C, and you just dose the same amounts. Really, really simple. I can't remember how many he said, but he's like, we did a conference call with him the other day, and he said like all trace elements in there other than the radioactive ones that they're not going to mess with.
Right.
So can't blame him on that. So I don't know, super cool. Really easy too. And honestly, there's a couple other things about Tropic Marine. You got a couple of them?
Pharma grade chemicals. So the material is pharma grade, which we've talked about extensively on our BRCV Investigate stuff. Which doesn't leave sludge and unsolubles in your bottom of your thing. So I'm comfortable mixing it up and using it. I can also use it with other 2 parts if I don't want to use balling. I want part 1 and part 2, or part A and part B. So
yeah. So I just say purity number 1.
Yeah.
Like we haven't actually. This wasn't one of the ones that we sent in, so because we didn't stock it at the time. But the pharmaceutical grade standard is a actual definable standard that meets all kinds of criteria to be able to sold. That pet grade just doesn't exist. There isn't one. So there's an actual standard that meets human pharmaceutical needs for the purity standard, and it's actually not one of the more expensive options either.
Oh yeah, that's true. It is relatively cheap compared to some other ones. Especially if you're adding this to something like pharma grade 2-part here, or the A and B, even though, what'd you say, like this was a few bucks a month? In
general, any of the ones that are powder are way cheaper because they're not selling you water. And not only they're not selling you water, but they didn't have to ship water around the world 3 times, from Germany to New York to, bulk resupply to back to you, that's really expensive, and you just end up paying for it. And water is, near free for most reefers who have an RO system. So, this is a really affordable option. Other than what's cheaper than that one?
For trace element approach?
No, just 2-part.
Just the cheapest? You're talking like the stuff off of the shelf?
I mean, yeah, stuff that we sell, dude.
Oh, okay. I mean, because you can go to the grocery store and get some cheap stuff, but
I mean, yeah, you can go buy anywhere, man, soap and stuff.
I'm not going to dose that to my tank. So, I mean, in bulk form, we have it.
All right.
And it's farmer grade too, so.
Yep. So, our 2-part. So this one's a kind of interesting topic because, we're talking about trace elements, and how many trace elements does BRS 2-part have?
0.
Yeah, 0, man. We just don't address it.
No.
And there is a reason for that, is because, we just didn't want to overcomplicate it. We don't want to make it expensive. And to be honest, man, you can have a pretty darn successful tank without even thinking about trace elements at all.
Wow.
I mean, then 80% of the tanks out there.
Water changes and 2-part.
Yep, it'll probably always be somewhat depleted in many of the trace and minor elements.
Still
but
awesome tanks.
The results speak them for themselves. So, you
Yeah.
can see tens of thousands of successful tanks that are just managing major or minor elements, or major elements with like calcium chloride and sodium carbonate or bicarbonate, and then, making sure that trace elements aren't depleted, totally with a decent water change schedule. And so, one of the things out there is, the BRS 2-part here is going to be the cheapest retail option. Like a gallon of it is like $4 or something like that. It's pretty darn cheap. Beyond that, there's the purity standards that come with being, pharmaceutical grade that just goes way beyond it. And like that isn't like a sales pitch, it's just real. So, you can go back and watch all of the videos that we did on the purity of these things. We sent them out to ICP MS testing to a real lab, not a hobby grade lab, and got real reports back on and shared with it.
It's visually, literally.
Oh, I mean, you can see with the eye.
See it.
Yeah.
Difference between brown town and about this much at the bottom of the mixing cones that have whatever in it versus just clear and nothing.
Well, that's part of the pharmaceutical grade standard, is
Yeah.
that they have to be able to remove all of the undissolved particulates. It's really what it is there's like a handful of things you need to do to meet the USP standard. And then just to do that, though, you have to remove almost everything else just to be able to get to that standard. So that's why it's so much better
Works in
on
our
all
benefit.
fronts.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if you want to do trace elements, though, and you want to dose trace elements, and you want to use the cheap 2-part that's not, high quality, but also, affordable for your tank? Well, I got to tell you, there's a few different options.
A couple different things we talked about. We've talked about several different options, like using Marin trace 1, 2, 3 with our 2-part, and there's some formulas out there you can add this stuff in there. We talked about using Red Sea's trace 1, 2, 3 based off of calcium consumption and based off of our 2-part.
Let's hit the funnel one first, man. So let's share that one. So do you remember how it goes?
Ooh, I just answered this video. I watched the beginning part of it and then sent it off, but as far as
I don't remember the actual
numbers,
dosage.
it's like it's really small. It's like 10 mils or so, 6 mils or something of trace 1 to calcium, and then a certain amount of mils, like very small amount of trace of 3 to the alkalinity, and then that's it.
Yeah, so there's 3 options. You want to dose trace elements with BRS 2-part. There's 3 super easy options. One is Tropic Marine. You dump in some of their color stuff right in the 2-part. So you kind of essentially make one of these guys, right? And it's super cheap. And the second one is dose trace elements, or the trace colors from Red Sea. And the third one is use Tropic Marine. So I'll just kind of hit on that first one with the Fauna Marin. The Fauna Marin is, again, you're going to take, they have 3 different ones. I think 2 of them actually go into one.
Yeah, I think that you actually,
magnesium one or something.
That seems right.
You dose it right into the 2-part, and you just make your own 2-part now that has trace elements in it, and it's just a solution, super easy. The second one is with the Red Sea. The way they do trace elements is they correlate it to the amount of calcium that you use. So we have a known amount of calcium inside the calcium chloride. So Red Sea shared the formula with us, and the way that it works is for every 51 milliliters of calcium or alkalinity solution they use of BRS,
to the tank,
1 milliliter of their 4 trace elements. So if you're
that's
using
easy.
BRS stuff, dude, like and you want to use 4 dosing heads, go ahead and, you know, just for every 51, it's really 51, but you could probably do every 50.
You know, even at those low cons, if you're only dosing like 50 mils or even 100 mils of calcium to your tank, you know, that means only 1 or 2 mils of each one of these.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't even probably waste a dosing head on that. I'd get a little pipette that has maybe graduated and stick it in there.
You can do it probably at that point weekly too.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're going fluctuating
true.
all over the crate.
So we talked
place.
about.
So so like if I fill them 50 milliliters a day, you know, that means I would do 7 milliliters
In a week of
right?
this.
So every Sunday I could just measure out 7 milliliters of each one
Done.
and put it in there.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. So that's pretty simple. How about, here's the one though. You know, this is the one that I think like almost everybody is gonna be like, aha, you know, finally. You know, why didn't I think of this before?
This is what I told the guy on AskBRS TV when he was asking about the Funamera and stuff. I said, hey, you might want to watch Friday's video because Ryan makes a pretty compelling argument to using Tropic Marine to add trace elements to our BRS2 part.
Yeah, I think it is pretty compelling because I talked to the guys over at Tropic Marine and they're like, hey man, can we use this thing with BRS2 part? And they're like, oh yeah, for sure, I'll get you the formula. So they share the formula with us, and this is how it goes. It's, you know, their part A is calcium chloride. Calcium chloride. Their part B is you know, sodium carbonate and bicarbonate carbonate. Here's sodium carbonate. You can make your own mix if you wanted to, but like it's the same thing. So why not just use a trace element mix with this one? Ours is like almost twice as concentrated as their A and B, so you use a little bit more of this stuff to make a equal solution. But I think it's 7.5 or 7 scoops.
7 scoops. So
scoops?
There's a scoop in here. Yeah.
There's a little scoop in here, and there's some grams. We're gonna release that video here this Friday, but I think you're gonna probably do a video just specific to this thing.
Just measuring it out and giving you the exact amounts for.
Yeah, I think it's 7 scoops to make 1 gallon, and then if you make 1 gallon of trace element solution, you're gonna dose it in the exact same amount as you would BRS2 part.
That's
so
easy.
I got 50 milliliters calcium, 50 milliliters of alkalinity, 50 milliliters of trace element solution.
That's easy.
Done, dude. And you know what? This box costs a total of $15 and is going to make 7 gallons. Or no, 5 gallons. 5 gallons of
Trace element
trace
solution.
element gallons. That's amazing. $3. You know, so for $3, man, I'm in. You know, like this, I don't care what you.
And a third dosing head.
Well, even a third dosing head. That's true.
That's not. I mean, that's not a big deal either.
Ongoing cost $3. You know, here's the thing, man. It's like trace elements, yes, no, whatever, however you feel about it. If I can get, you know, 80-20 this thing, get 80% of the benefit for $3 a month, I don't need to see anything miraculous. You know, the sky doesn't need to part and, you know, show me incredible 80% faster growth rates and coloration. And, like, you don't need to really blow me away. I just need to know, man, that I'm doing a lot better than I was doing before for $3, right? Yeah. So, you know, for me, man, like, I'm gonna do this, you know, because why not at that super low cost? So I think it's time to answer some questions here. We went through all of it. We got a half hour left to answer questions. Looks like Dave finally figured out how to run the question thing here.
Got a lot of them pending.
Well, shoot, congratulations, Dave. I mean, one day we're gonna get to the end of this goofy,
playing around
we're trying
with the thing.
new softwares and stuff. I don't know. All right, so. Let's go to Glenn here. Can Part C Tropic Marine Ballin be mixed into the ATO with calc? I don't think you can mix it in with the calc, but it's just dose the amount of calcium. So you could figure out. He crashed us. You can figure out how much calcium is in the calc. You know, we'd have to do some math on that thing, but.
I think we kind of figured that, well, it's based on max saturation.
Yeah.
There's calculators out there, but most of them are based on max saturation because, I mean, you could really make a saturation based off of any, you know, up to 2 teaspoons. So as a basis, I think that most calculators will do a max saturation 2 teaspoons per gallon. But I think we did a video on the Red Sea portion on max saturation and how much to dose on that. But there's calculated what's that reef calculator that you use all the time?
I think it's called Reef Calculator.
It's probably, I think it is, like Reef Calculator. And that's the one that we found that has the max saturation calculator. You can base your calcium consumption off of that.
So if you're using calc, I think you could absolutely use that. You'd probably figure out a dosing pump, but I don't think you could mix it in. I don't think that would probably work. Because they're kept separate for a reason.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So is there a trace, how about Nathaniel here? Is there a trace element supplement that can be used in the calcium reactor?
I think this is something that we're interested in testing too, that maybe I mean, you could probably use I would say, maybe use a secondhand one, but who's to say that there's not trace elements wrapped up in the skeletal, media that we're melting to make new skeletons? So probably to some degree, maybe not all of them, but.
You know what? I think it's going to really depend on the media that you get. We're going to find out the answer to this question, and I think you'll probably see it in a couple of months here. But if you look at the reef bones or whatnot from Two Little Fishes, it's little pieces of acropora in there. I know exactly what that is, then if you look at your arms or whatnot, a lot of them look like little pebbles. So I don't really know what it is. It's clearly some kind of limestone or whatnot, or not limestone necessarily, calcium carbonate. And then the different sizes are different materials. So one might be better than another one, and some of them are actually lab grade type of precipitated media. So definitely it's gonna be different. The thing about trying to get a supplement that's gonna match that is you're gonna try to figure out what media is there, what's in your media, and then what am I missing?
Yeah, and then go try to dose the missing stuff.
Yeah, I think calcium reactor, your best bet is water changes, man, and use the best media possible for trace element. And then if there's something in there critical that you weren't getting, just dose it by hand. Use a test kit or ICP or something to figure out, if you really, really thought something was important, address those things specifically. All right, pick one out, man.
I like this. Christopher is wondering what the best affordable dosing pump is for 2-part. I would have to when I first started 2-part, the BRS 2-part 1.1 mil doser was the cheapest one for me, or most affordable, if you will. I mean, there's some other ones out there that have multiple dosing heads, but if you want to talk about a pump that feels like it was going to last me, I've had them both. I've had the eBay ones, the Amazon ones, some from Alibaba, and then I've had BRS dosers, I've had Neptune doses. When it came down to how often replacing a head out, I replaced. I think one of my Amazon or eBay ones lasted me a few months, and had to replace a head. But I think I still have in my closet the 2 BRS 2-part 1.1 mil dosers I had on my very first tank. So at $50, $60.
I don't know if I've ever. I mean, I go through a lot of those things here because they're all over the place. But I don't know if I've ever had one on a tank that actually failed.
Oh.
I don't know. They're certainly last a long time. So this is what I'd say is affordable. A lot of people like little digital interfaces and whatnot, and I think the Bubble Magus from our offering is probably the cheapest option for that.
Yeah.
The difference is, it's obviously a cheap product, but you get 3 heads, you get a little interface with it, and the one thing I'll say is it's friction. A lot of those pump heads like that are friction based. So there's a little rod that sticks out there that hits on some rubber wheels and spins it, and will work good as long as the friction is good. I guess. Whereas versus a tooth gear type gears. Yeah. So the BRS one is a geared option. I would assume the dose is a geared option. If I had any option available to me 100% and I owned an Apex, I'd just save up and buy the dose. If I already owned an Apex, if you got to buy Apex, it's a different story. But if that thing doses the appropriate flow rate, for whatever it is you're dosing, the amount by default, it's super, super easy. It tracks the amount you dose on a daily basis. It's just, there's no other option, man. Was it $300?
Yeah,
that's a lot. But most of them, you buy 2 pump heads, and I'm going to be into this for $140. Yeah, it's probably double that, but man,
worth it.
I think it's worth it over the long run, man. You'll be happy you bought that. But that's only if you own Apex. Outside of that, the thing about the BRS dosers that I just think gets overlooked a lot is if I buy a different doser, it's really hard to control the flow rate, or impossible really, and so it just spurts out calcium and alkalinity, which makes isolated areas of super, super high concentrated calcium and alkalinity, whereas the BRS doser does 1.1 milliliter a minute.
It's change.
Drip, drip, drip. You know, it's just super slow. So if I'm making chemistry changes to the tank, man, it should be slow. And so it's accurate, it's slow, it's low profile, it's easy to mount, super quiet, doesn't make any noise. Downside, you need a timer to run it.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy as just like saying, hey, I want 100 milliliters and hit 100 milliliters on the interface. I need to figure out, you know, that this does 1.1 milliliters. So divide 100 by 1.1. That's the amount of minutes it needs to be on. Put it in my timer and then roll. You know, so the amount you dose is just more minutes, less minutes, rather than you know, the equation of or just hitting milliliters. So I guess a tiny bit of thought more into it, but you know, effectively, it's way better, man, than most of the options. It's just quiet, it's easy to use, it's slow, it's appropriate for the application, and I don't know. Also, you know, one of the things that they do break sometimes, man. So, but it's a BRS product here, so the stuff that we actually make here, right? Like you call up your unhappy because your doser broke. What's your answer?
Okay, I'll get you another one.
New one, boo. Like I cut the cord, throw it in the trash.
Yeah,
man. Like,
I'll get you a new one.
Yeah, get a new one. Like don't even bother sending it in. You know, so like I think that you're gonna. That is an advantage for sure. All right, so let's pull another one, man.
Yeah, for sure. What do we got here?
Okay, well, hey, can you dose Tropic Marine C with 2 parts? So if you missed it,
you can.
Yeah, you just go ahead and mix this guy up, 7 scoops, I think, to make a gallon of solution, and you dose the exact amount you would of your BRS 2 parts. So if you're dosing 100 milliliters of calcium and alkalinity, 100 milliliters of the new part C, trace elements, it costs $3 a gallon.
Yeah, I'm gonna write this one for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I mean, it's super easy. I don't see why you shouldn't.
I wish we would have found that out a long time ago. I have a 90-gallon tank, and I've been dosing 50 milliliters calcium for 3 weeks, and still have no reading in my.
Where's the rest of it?
Where's the rest? I don't know. Well,
here it comes.
Here it comes.
It's the little tiny guy over there.
Oh my gosh. And I still have no reading in my tank, and some help. Other reasons are good. If you have no reading of calcium in your tank, the test kit's no good.
Dosing 50 mils?
Yeah. So this is what I would say, man. When you're dosing any of these things and you got a problem, there's just a couple of steps you should go through every time. First off, if your test kit's telling you something totally crazy, it's probably your test kit or your testing method.
Yeah.
You know, like, because totally crazy is rare, right?
Test again, or test again, or test against some other kit, right?
Yeah. Well, you test against another kit, but almost certainly, like if I'm dosing calcium chloride and it's telling me that I'm not dosing calcium, it's almost certainly the kit or procedure or something, right?
Yeah.
And so the first thing I would do, man, every time is I go to the reef calculator, I put in my the tank size, I put in what my calcium level should be, what I want it to be, what it is, dose the amount to correct it, and go back and test in 10 minutes. It should be accurate. If it is, then you know something else going on in your tank, right? But I will tell you the most common, by like actually number one for sure. I'm dosing tons of calcium and alkalinity, but the levels won't go up. What's the problem?
It's precipitating somewhere?
You're dosing too much.
It's like too much, yeah.
I mean, it's totally counterdictive to like what you would think, man. Like I'm adding more. Like why wouldn't I get more? It's because you raise the levels up too high. All those little fresh ions of calcium and alkalinity you're actually precipitating out. It's dropping.
Yeah.
It's going to go below where you were at before, right? And it creates a precipitation event, you know. And so you'll specifically notice it if you got white crust all over your heaters and pumps and whatnot. And so, like, one of the things I'll also tell you, so you've identified you got this problem, per se, and I would just stop dosing everything,
altogether.
man. Like, stop dosing for like a day or two, right? And then go take that correction, or go to the calculator, find out how much you need to raise it, and then come back tomorrow, see how much it's dropped, and then start dosing that amount daily, you know, to see where it takes you. It's probably like, you know, 1/5 of the amount that you were dosing before, if not less. And so really the instinct is, hey, I'm dosing and it's not working, dose more. Dose more. It's getting worse. And every time you up it, it actually gets worse. So, so it's kind of like hit a reset button and start way low again is often the solution. Shoot for another one.
One thing I'll mention about that too is when I got into there was like a progression in the hobby on how much I was learning. For a while it was just, hey, keep this box with water changes like they told me to, and I'm not testing anything really. I mean, I can test my salinity, and that's probably about it. But when I started to progress in the hobby, where now I'm like targeting specific chemistry levels in my tank to grow these corals like alkalinity and calcium, I need to also increase my my testing kits, more or less. I mean, there's some testing kits out there that get you a pretty good ballpark range. When you purposefully are trying to target specific numbers, I kind of want a test kit that also is designed for more accuracy, so I can more accurately push for those numbers. So some of those, there's something to be said for me personally about like upgrading my testing kits to ones that are like well known from used from people like you.
Yeah,
if I asked you, well, what your testing kits you would use, and I'm trying to do the same thing you're doing, I'm probably get the same test kits.
Well, there's just test kits you would use for like a freshwater, or not freshwater, but like a fish-only tank that is tiny or something, man. And then there's a test kit you would use when I'm going to invest a lot of time and money in this. It's just different, accuracy is different. And, one of the things that I like, my pet peeves actually, is the word accuracy, because I got news for you, man. Like, you're buying a $16 test kit that, came out of Holland, passed through 3 different hands. Man, there was $2 worth of stuff inside there by the time it's, gotten through the whole thing. And, the accuracy on it is like a hobby grade accuracy test. This isn't a lab, man. So accuracy isn't the word. Right? It's consistency. Consistent. Can I get consistent results? Can I perform this the same way? Is it easy to read? And can I get consistent results? And I see a lot of people out there like, oh, my test kit's bad. I tested my Red Sea against my Salford, and the Salford was a high, so I know for sure that it was wrong. Like, well, why do you trust the Salford over the Red Sea, or vice versa, or the checker, or whatever? Like, none of those are sent from God to tell us for sure what your alkalinity is, and they all have their inaccuracies. And like one of the things is like titration method is definitely a better method for alkalinity than the colorimetric method for the Hanna checker for alkalinity. But I'll use the Hanna checker every time, without fail, because A, it's fast enough that I can actually do it. Right. It only takes me a minute, so I'll do it all the time. B, gives me a digital readout, so I don't know like when it turned pink or purple. Did it change back? Did it go, where's the end point on this thing? Right. All these different steps to it and time and whatever. And B, it's reliable, man, or consistent, meaning that like every time I do it, it gives me a similar result. I could do the test 5 times and it's going to be almost the same thing every single time. So for me, consistency trumps accuracy. And that's part of why when we talk about like getting the perfect level, some people are looking for an alkalinity of 7 because it's natural seawater or whatever. But like if I drop 2 DKH from 7 and I'm at 5, things are gonna go south. If I'm at 8.5 and I drop a 1.5, I'm back down to 7. So like it is not as big of a deal. So really, man, I know all of us want accuracy, but almost nobody wants to buy it.
That's going to be expensive.
So like nobody wants to. You want to go buy lab grade test kits that are out there. I know like
some of the Hawks, like the DR.
The Hawkman. Well, I don't know about that one, but like the Lamont one we sell. Is accuracy is both in the types of reagents you're using. It's the quality of the instructions. Accuracy means if it said mix it for 30 seconds, I hit the timer and I mix it for 30 seconds, not 25 or not 35, man, but for 30, and then I make the reading. If I do it at 25 one time and 45 the next, accuracy's out the window, man. It's not the same anymore.
That's me being accurate and consistent, versus the test kit, which even can make leaps and bounds in some of this, just the standard hobby grade ones too, is how accurate and consistent I am at performing the test versus the kit itself.
Well, one of the cool things about the Lamont one is they use, instead of giving you like some little cheap scoop to try to figure out how much to put in there, is it level, I don't know, they give you a tablet. So the reagent is in like a sealed bottle where you stick it in there, kind of like you pull it out, kind of like it was a pharmaceutical or something. Okay. And then the reagent that you put in the solution comes in a little tablet that is the same amount every time. And then beyond that, it actually has 3 color changes. So it has a color change of or the first color, you know, and then it has a color that you should get, and then a beyond endpoint.
Oh yeah, okay.
Right?
That makes
So like,
sense.
hey, you went too far.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
That's good to
sweet,
know.
man. Yeah, and like now you know, and you can really start to get to read it. One of the cool things about some of those better alkalinity ones is they have, you know, it's a change based on pH, the color.
Okay.
And so like sometimes, you know, it'll be, you know, changes yellow, red, green, blue, whatever they chose, you know. But the more finite one is when you get 2 colors and where they both change and then it hits purple or something in the middle. And that's when you really got the intersection of 2 pH changes and you get a more finite reading. So, yeah, man, consistency over accuracy. I know you want accuracy. We all do. Getting it is tough. And especially unless you want to like just dump money on it.
Yeah.
All right. What's another one?
Let's see.
All right, 15 minutes left.
Is it normal for a tank to use a lot more alk than calcium and mag?
No. A lot? I'd say
a lot, no. Okay, well, this brings up another point, and I'll probably ask you here while we're asking this one too. Well, so maybe, right, if somebody was using sodium bicarb at the sodium bicarb max concentration and then somehow he mixed up calcium chloride at like the calcium chloride concentration that was supposed to be used with soda ash for equal balancing, then you might notice like, hey, I'm burning through twice as much sodium bicarb than I am calcium just to maintain levels. But that's just a concentration-based type thing, right?
So that's where that word normal, I think, comes in, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say it's very common that they're not like one perfect one for one,
Yeah.
right? I mean, did you mix it to the exact milliliter? You know, probably not. So, you know, it's pretty common that it's not one for one, you know, all the way. You know, a little bit different, and it strays, you know, slightly over months. Uncommon that it would be, you know, a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like something's wrong, you know, and it's almost certainly in the concentration in that case. I can't think of many other reasons. There's a handful of other reasons why it strays. I think Randy Holmes Farley has like a good article on that, but they're all kind of oddball things, and like there's always a cause that you can fix usually.
Would there be a difference in like what about water volume? Would that have an effect on it? So say maybe it's not in a normal 100-gallon or 50-gallon tank for them to be completely disparate, but maybe in like what about a 600-700-gallon tank? Would it be more reasonable that there might be some disparity between the alkalinity and the calcium dose not being equal? Still probably wouldn't be that far apart though, right?
I think it would be related uptake to the water, not about the water volume,
Okay.
but the amount that you would add in comparison to the size of the amount of water.
Right.
So typically smaller tanks have a higher coral to water density, especially like nanos and stuff.
Right.
So it might actually have in there faster.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But if it's a lot, something's wrong, and you should go looking for it. And it's probably in the concentration.
Cool.
All right.
Still not clear on what the difference is between soda ash and sodium bicarbonate and plus and minus of either on...
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, do you want to hit on
Yeah,
that
I'm
one?
going to try to finish the question when it pops up here as it gets cut off here. But so what's the difference between soda ash, sodium bicarbonate, and the plus and minus of either different types of tanks, mixed SPS softies? I mean, basically, they're both doing the same thing. You're dosing, you know, alkalinity to the tank, so you're making, you know, one's sodium bicarbonate, one's sodium carbonate. The main difference between the two is, well, a couple different things. Like soda ash has that pH boosting effect, so it will elevate or can elevate pH. Sodium bicarb not so much, but you can only mix so much sodium bicarb into solution for concentration, and which is probably half of the concentration of what you can soda ash. So soda ash is more concentrated as far as like I say a gallon of solution. And has a pH boosting effect, but both of them are dosing alkalinity to the tank. You can get the same job done by both. When would you choose one over the other?
Okay, so I would choose sodium bicarbonate if I want to make large changes. So if I'm going to go and make a DKH change to the tank, like I want to go from 7 to 8 or from 7 to 8.5 or whatever, I would use bicarbonate because it's kind of a very minimal change to the pH of the tank. So I'm changing alkalinity, but I'm only changing one element at a time. Whereas if I use soda ash, it's going to add like a lot, or it's going to raise the pH pretty significantly all at once, right? And so I wouldn't want to do that. So that's why, though, that the soda ash is better for daily dosing. I'm drip throughout most of the day. Is that's best. It's raising the pH. The corals are going to grow faster and overall better for the tank. And so what I'll say is, a lot of the commercial 2-parts out there are just sodium carbonate or bicarbonate, which is a less or more dilute solution. And I think the reason for that, or they're a mix, but I think the reason for that is just because they're a lot safer to use. Like safer meaning for the tank. Like it's you can overdose it and
not have swings somewhere else.
Yeah, so it's kind of designed, I think, for a wide breadth of reefers that some of them may not be well researched in what they're doing, so like it's a safer option. However, for a more intermediate to like pro level reefer who wants the best function, it's soda ash, because you're going to raise the pH the most with that consistent and reliably over the day. So what I would say is anybody who's going to dose their tank should have soda ash around for, or anybody's going to do it this way, should dose soda ash as their 2-part. But you should also have a bag of sodium bicarbonate around, make a solution of that, to make occasional adjustments, because you will, or make adjustments to your salt mix or whatever you're going to do. Use bicarbonate for that, and it's super cheap. In fact, I probably wouldn't even buy a whole container. I'd probably buy just like one of our little
the
new
single
pouches.
gallon pouch.
It's like $6 or something bucks.
Make a gallon.
Yeah, make 1
it's
gallon of
last
it,
you forever.
and you're probably good. For eons,
for a long
man.
time.
Because it's just small adjustments. I bet you it lasts you multiple years. But you're doing it right and you're doing it safely. And like you said, if you use bicarbonate, you have to do double the dose as soda ash. So
to have the same effect.
A gallon doesn't last you half as long. So if it lasts me a month, now with bicarbonate it would only last me 2 weeks, which I would prefer not to change the thing out every week. Part of the nice part of 2-part is that it's pretty concentrated, so I can change it out like monthly or so, depending on the size of my container. All right, cool. Another one here. Okay, wait. How can I rely on my doser if my 2-part consumption is always changing? Stable dosing for weeks and then probably changes a lot. So we'll see what else that says. You know what? Like if your consumption in 2-part is changing, rapidly, I'd look at the reason why rather than what you're dosing, because if you're going up and down, something is starting and stopping photosynthesis in the tank. So something is causing those corals to rapidly grow and then stop. And figure out what that is, because that's your problem, not the amount that you dose, because most tanks will stabilize around a controlled amount of input of calcium chloride and soda, sodium carbonate or bicarbonate. So I just would really think about, more of that than the other. All right. Well, let me see what else here. Okay, how long does the 2-part last after it's mixed?
I think you usually say what you can grandfather this stuff to your grandkids.
I think you could bury me with it.
A bottle
like
of
when they
ash.
dig me up a million years from now, sweet 2-part. Lasts forever as long as you watch. Don't let it evaporate. So nothing's gonna happen to the calcium ions or the carbonate ions. They're all gonna stay just fine. The only difference would be that if you didn't put a lid on it, it would evaporate over time, which means it would just get a little bit more concentrated. And even that, man, probably isn't the hugest deal, as long as it was a reasonable amount. Let's see, what else we got here? Break down the bottom there. You just scrolled past it. Would you recommend someone new to dosing go for a 2-part or straight to a 4-part?
Interesting.
So if you recommend someone new to dosing, so you know what?
when I think of 4-part, there's not much like 4-part. Basically like Triton stuff, right? Like maybe your alkalinity split up into 2, and then you have a calcium, and you're dosing magnesium on a balanced scale. But if new to dosing, as easy as possible, and I think it's easier for me to dose 2 than it is to dose 4, where I don't have to initial investment initially, and then just programming and making sure that this one's not dosing with this one, and hopefully I didn't get this mixed up when I'm replenishing them. I can do like a alkalinity on one and a calcium in the other. I can do it in 5-gallon buckets at large. That's even better. Like if I have a smaller tank, or like a 50-gallon tank or what have you, and I'm going through a gallon of solution in a month, I can make, if I have room and I can mix up 5 gallons of this stuff, and I don't have to touch it for a long time. That's super easy for me.
I agree. So I would definitely say new to reefing, I'd just say the BRS 2-part, because it's cheap, easy, affordable, like straightforward, tons of success. Endless tanks behind it.
Yeah.
And then I'd just say if I didn't want to mix it, which is just adding water to it for some reason, I'd probably would still go 2-part, and I'd probably use this Bionic guy just because it also has tons of success behind it. It just costs a little bit more because it's pre-mixed with water for you, and has some trace elements in it. This is what I'd say though is it kind of depends on your mentality to reefing. And when I give that answer, it's kind of like a blanket answer, because when you're new to reefing, you tend to not want to put big investments into it, right? Like not just the average person. And then you get more and more into it, and the more success you have, the increase your willingness to invest in it. Like if I'm setting up a brand new tank, my willing to invest in it is just minimal to some degree. If I've had a tank for 5 years, and every time that somebody comes to my house, the first thing they do is go to the tank and say how awesome it is. They bring their kids over to see this tank because it's so awesome. Well, my willingness to invest in that kind of success is skyrocketing, because like I got so much success, it's a big source of pride, and I've seen, what happens when I put in success into it. So if you just wanted to start from this, from the beginning, man, and like put, the most effort into it, I guess, for me, I probably would say that for 90% or 99% even, man, of the tanks out there, the BRS 2-part, and probably this guy, here addressing trace elements, but even just water changes, is going to produce results. And then if I wanted to use the best, like I just said I wanted to use best, I can't help it. I would definitely, go ahead and, think about using a Triton guy, because best to me, man, isn't just a bunch of claims, like, hey, I include all the stuff that's supposed to be in there. Best to me, it means accountability too. And so when they attach it to the ICP testing and say, see, it actually works the way that it was supposed to, like, all right, sweet. And then better yet, hey, you got something unique going on in your tank where whatever cobalt's being depleted faster than normal. Here's some cobalt.
Yeah.
Like a not trace element elixir that has everything under the sun, where if I want to get my cobalt up, I got to dose like 50 other unwanted elements.
Yeah.
I'm going to dose cobalt. Maybe I don't want to, maybe I do, but I think trace out between water changes and this guy, I think you're going to do better than 99% of reefers out there. And if you're part of the top 1% with that solution, you got to really start thinking about the benefits of the incremental fractions of the top 1%. Like what is it really? So for me, man, if you're a newer reefer, BRS 2-part, if you're a newer reefer willing to invest, it's not just the chemicals, but you also probably only need 2 dosing pumps. Say, they're $140. If I'm going to dose this guy, you actually only need 3. For a lot of people maybe don't know this, but with the 4-part of the Triton method, you can actually mix the 2 alkalinity components together.
3A and 3B.
Yeah, and then just dose double that amount, right? And that's kind of confusing as to why that is. But one of the things is you can get a lot more calcium diluted into water than you can alkalinity, right? And so for us, like, we don't bother with that. Like, you could get a lot more of this calcium chloride. It can make a super, super potent calcium chloride. But for me, it's just way easier for the average reefer to understand the fact that you dose equal amounts of these every day, instead of trying to go mad scientist and get the most I can of this one, but then some kind of weird corresponding amount of this one. And it just, like, I got to do the math all the time. It just gets kind of confusing.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, that's true of actually the Red Sea one. So the Red Sea one, they do that. They make the calcium as potent as possible, and the alkalinity is just less. And then the advantage of that is the calcium one lasts a lot longer, right? And so I don't have to change the calcium one out as often. So that's pretty nice, I guess. But the dosage are not 1-to-1 anymore. So kind of what they did with the Core 7 is come in between that. Hey, you dose 2 of these alkalinity ones, and it'll make the calcium one stronger. And lo and behold, man, you can dose equal amounts of everything. The conversation's easy, specifically for a newer reefer. Same amount of each 4 of these. But if you wanted, and you wanted to step up your game, or you only had 3-headed doser, just go ahead and mix the 2 alkalinities together and add twice as much. So there's some method to the madness there, and not always known.
There's like 2 or 3 calls for if we're going to talk about these since they're up here.
All right, so they're up there, man. Like, why not? So talking about two-part.
In trace.
In the past, there was some 1 parts out there. Most of them were garbage. I saw one out there that says that it was Super Gold Deluxe calcium additive. I forget the actual name, but it says adds all trace elements, all major, minor, and trace elements in one solution.
Everything.
Yep, everything.
Super Gold Deluxe.
Yeah, and you know what? That was accurate. It did, because it was sand in a container, man.
Which is everything.
Yeah, it's everything. But if I put the sand in the tank, it ain't gonna
nothing.
ionize into solution and feed the tank. So, I mean, kind of misleading, but at the same time, I guess,
True.
technically accurate but stupid at the same time. And that's really kind of magic elixir stuff. And so after that, you saw, was it calcium citrate or
acetate?
Acetate. Okay, so calcium acetate was another 1 part. That one's a legit one.
Yeah.
Calcium goes in the tank, ionizes, floats off. The acetate then is, metabolized by bacteria in the water and then turns into a carbonate alkalinity in the tank. Downside is there's like an organic carbon molecule that's attached to the acetate, which rapidly depletes the oxygen in the tank, so your fish will die. If you use more than a little bit. There's a real maximum to this that you probably wouldn't want to go past, and because of that, it never got popular.
Yeah.
However, new world we live in is the carbocalcium, which is calcium formate. Formate. I always want to say fromate, but it's formate.
Yeah.
And same thing. What happens?
Same thing. Is just the beneficial bacteria break down the formate, release some carbonate, and without the oxygen depletion, now you get alkalinity out of the same thing too. The only thing is it's just as strong. Like when you mix it into solution, it's just as strong as a standard 2-part, but it's one thing. It's different. The carbocalcium doesn't have trace elements. It's just straight alkalinity and calcium.
Just straight calcium alkalinity in the carbocalcium. But like you said, you put it in there and into the solution, and the solution hits the water, calcium goes off, ionizes. The formate, I don't know if the right terminology is that it breaks down, but
right.
the bacteria definitely metabolize the formate. Formate into carbonate alkalinity in the tank, and it does it in a balanced manner. Now, one of the downsides with the 1 part, what we discussed the other day, is that it is a balanced amount, but there's different uptakes in the tanks, probably different types of coral or whatnot. And so, what if it isn't uptake an exact equal amount?
Unless I have another solution, I can't make adjustments.
Yeah, you can't fix it with this.
Yeah.
So you're gonna buy a jug of calcium chloride and sodium bicarbonate anyway, and keep that around. And again, I'd probably get the little 1-gallon pouches because just for adjustments.
The amount you have to make changes is probably little. Yeah.
You're gonna make little adjustments. So also that takes a little bit. Probably I don't know the exact amount of time, but it isn't like
dial in.
Well, you don't add calcium or sodium carbonate to the tank and be able to test for it in 10 minutes. It actually needs to be metabolized first, and so it's kind of one of the stable things that you're not going to test immediately after dosing. I'm going to test dosing it every day and make sure that it's a stable solution. And so what the next one is though, the Alpha Reef guy.
Yeah, which is basically the same thing, the carbocalcium, except for they have all of the trace elements built into this one.
Essential.
Too. All the
No,
essential
not all,
trace elements, not all of them. But
whatever essential means.
But yeah, so now I've got one solution that does the same thing as the carbocalcium with the single solution, but also addresses my trace elements. And I don't need a third bottle, I don't need a third mixing jug or fourth or 7 dosing heads. I can do it all in one.
So the only reason that I'm not like screaming this thing from the mountaintop is just because you haven't seen tens of thousands of tanks produce results with it. What I have seen is Zach's tank that's a little 60-gallon cube, filled with SPS corals from top to bottom, successful with this guy. Right. What I have seen is the ULM polyp and softy tank, successful with this guy. Right now, the LPS version is also on this, but that tank just got corals not like too distant or past.
Yeah.
So it hasn't had corals in it long enough for me to say like super awesome success. But if Zach can do it in his, I can't imagine why it wouldn't happen in mine. So we're starting to see that, and I think you're going to start to see over time, like more and more people gravitate to this one part solution, because in the one part, another advantage of one part, no sodium, no chloride. So no effect on salinity, big advantage. And really, man, one dosing pump, man. So my dosing pump solution just went from $140 to $70. So it's just one thing to dial in. You probably do need to make adjustments to it over time, because that might be never be the number one most popular. But you're definitely going to see people gravitate to it. You're going to see the trailblazers out there producing tanks. You're going to eventually, see more and more people thinking about it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, it is 4:05, so I think we'll call it a day.
Sure.
All right. So what's on Wednesday?
Wednesday, we're looking at the Tropic Marine. We're looking at a Tropic Marine video on actually
Salt mixes.
Salt mixes.
Yep.
Yeah. Which salt mix you need, or which salt mix, which one of the 3 that we carry, the Tropic Marine salt mixes, and for what tank. And then I also threw one in there about
classic.
the classic salt, the Pro Reef salt, and then the bioactive salt.
What do they do?
So I explained that for you on Wednesday, and I also got another one in there. We're gonna have 2 going on Wednesday. The second one is how to extend your Neptune dose away from your tank if you want to use it like we do for auto water changes or continuous water changes. So yeah.
All right, Friday, I promise you. Dave, you're going to get it done?
Yeah.
All right, Dave said promises. He's already like half done, so I'm pretty certain we're going to see it. But we're going to see the hybrid method, what we install on all of these tanks, and for calcium, alkalinity, and or major, minor, and trace elements. So we'll see you then. All right, thanks.
Take care, guys.